My face currently feels like I've been run through by Tom Stewart.
Puts it to the top of the square. Oh, beautiful little fist in there by Dale. Crucial centimetre moments.
He definitely has a bit of the Belcho spirit, as I have a bit of the Belcho spirit.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Back Pocket Podcast. I am your host Alistair, as always joined by my co-host Jack, and it's a bit of a terrific news week. We've got a 19th team, and here on the podcast we're exclusively announcing the 20th team.
Oh, yeah.
We're here to announce it is in WA, and it will be based in our home base of Midland. The Midland Meth Heads. With a population of 6,000 people, we're going to eclipse maybe Gold Coast in membership, maybe.
There would be a lot of Midland fans in Mid-Vale and Swanview as well. I think that...
It extends a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
You won't get any from Jane Brook. They're all on Freo. We know
absolutely. That. Anyone out near Allenbrook, that's all Freo. Even though that's northern suburbs, which is supposed to be West Coast space, they're all converts.
Lots of traders around.
There was a lot of news this week, footy-wise. Obviously, we still... It's the second time we've now heard that we have the new CEO.
He went to the Hobart Airport to announce that we had a team that we already knew about last week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we mentioned it on this podcast.
It was the same as how they announced that the stadium funding had gone through 3 days after we found out the stadium funding had gone through. They love a photo op.
Gil just... was it Gil?
Yeah, Gil went down there. That's what I mean.
Gil?
I don't know.
I just remembered it was Gil in those photos.
Yeah. So we keep hearing we've got a new CEO officially, and then... Gil keeps doing the stuff. So who knows when he actually takes over. Maybe we'll have a new voice on Brownlow night. I'll jump into the votes right off the bat, as we do. My one vote this week was to James Sicily. Okay. I don't even care that he had 26 touches at better than 80% by foot. He had 9 spoils, won all 4 of contested defensive one-on-ones, had 10 rebound 50s and 6 score involvements. And I think that was a pretty good game. In a game they went really close to knocking the Bulldogs off. I was really impressed with how they played, actually.
They've been sneakily good in some games and pretty terrible in others.
Yes.
But Mitch Lewis back in that side,
makes a huge difference.
Forwards, it really changes their structure. And, James Sicily was playing well before, and he will continue to play well after.
Yeah, when he's not forced to play a lockdown role, obviously he's going to play the football he's always been playing, which is very, very good football. So that's my one.
My one is to, I don't think he's ever gotten a vote on the show, Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera.
Fair enough.
20 disposals, 85% efficiency, 7 intercepts, 14 pressure acts, 452 metres gained, and 5 tackles. It was the best game he's ever played in the AFL.
It was. He was very, very good.
And it's not even close. He was... he had a quieter second half, but he was everywhere in that first half. There
was someone in this house while that game was on who kept hearing his name and getting very excited about it because they like it. It was neither of us. It was Greg.
It was like
But he did have a really good game. It seems like he's really building form. I'm really excited to see. Third year seems to be the big year for a lot of players. I'm really excited to see him next year because... he's great to watch.
Yeah, and it definitely helps that they're playing with a bit of speed and flair.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're still very defensive at the moment, St Kilda, but it's fun watching him, and that's really what matters. And like I said, it was his best game ever, so easy one.
Totally agree.
Probably could have given more.
Was one of our favourite kinds of games. A very defensive game without a huge amount of disposals. It was to Jack Buckley.
Yeah.
He's played a few good games already, but coming of age as a key defender now that... Taylor is out. He played really well in that, filling in for that role. Had 13 spoils and 8 intercepts. Yeah. Had 12 contested one-on-ones and only lost 2 of them. And I think it was pretty much a career best game for him. Was, again, another team that they won, and I really didn't expect them to. I thought Sydney, especially with both Franklin and Tom McCartan back, midfield strength would have matched GWS's, and I thought they beat them around the ground. But GWS surged home in that last quarter, and Toby Green got it done.
Yeah, I was in the kitchen, I was making food, and I kept hearing GWS pile on goals, and I had to literally stop cooking and sit down and watch it. It was crazy. But Jack Buckley, I kind of have him in the same category as a Nathan Murphy and a Jack Payne, someone who's a little bit undersung. Obviously, we're pretty big fans of Nathan Murphy vocally on this podcast. They're really kind of 1% of kings. They're
Yep.
silent killers. And obviously that's something that we like. And I totally agree. He's not in my votes, but I understand it.
Easy. Your two?
My two goes to Harris Andrews, who continues to get votes every week from us. He was basically allowed to do whatever he wanted in that game. So he had 20 disposals, 80% efficiency, which is usually a little bit of a knock on him, 11 marks, 7 intercepts, 13 pressure acts, 7 1%ers, pretty good all-around game, and continues to have a fine season.
I genuinely think he's having a career best season as captain.
Which is crazy because he's
already,
three-time All-Australian.
Yeah, a couple at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, he really seems to be taking that leadership on board. I think it's made him a bit more sensible. He's been prone to mouthing off a bit in the past, which I think he's been doing less. And yeah, he's playing really, really good footy. It's been hard to judge how good because they've really belted some teams, as they tend to do, especially in Brisbane. But yeah, I've really liked his season. And the fair two. Didn't make one for me, but a good two.
It'll be good to see him go up against one of Colonel and Mackay this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's a pretty big test.
And traditionally, he's not matched up well against Hawkins in the past. So it'll be interesting to see when that comes around as well.
He's in good form, so better hope he drops off before Harris Andrews
crazy
gets
when that 3 weeks at the start of the season, everyone was like, Hawkins is cooked. And then he's just come back for 3 weeks and he's kicked,
Let's be real.
18 goals. My 3 votes was to another first-time vote getter on this podcast, I believe, was to Will Powell.
Okay.
Talk about career best games. That was insane. I feel like he could have given most of the Gold Coast backline votes in this game. They turned 53 inside 50s to 6 goals from 15 shots. It's
pretty good.
It's awesome. But he had 28 disposals, 23 of them were kicks, 10 intercepts, 5 marks, 3 spoils, 14 rebound 50s.
5 marks. I'm spoiling that he's in my votes. I've got
Five intercept marks.
Okay, so I was going to say I've got him down as 13 marks.
No. five intercept marks, 14 rebound 50s and 3 score launches, which meant that when he was kicking it out of 50, it was going to important places. Awesome game. Huge fan. Love that backline. We talked about them a lot last year. I felt like he was always the third sung hero, and nice to get him in there.
My 3 votes is going to Darcy Moore.
Yep.
It's hard to really come up with new things to say about Darcy Moore this year. I saw a take in the media that is he the current best captain in the AFL, and
I think we talked about it last week. And yeah, he'd have to be in the conversation.
It's definitely
that was
there.
A really special game from him again.
23 disposals, 78% efficiency, 6 marks, 10 intercepts, 11 rebound 50s, 588 metres gained, 9 1%ers. It's just good
Awesome
stats
stuff.
across
And then
the board.
just to seal the deal, takes the mark to win the game.
end. Yeah.
Brilliant. They're a freak team, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, with moments to go in that game, with 8 minutes left, Adelaide were in 4th spot on the ladder. And then now they're 8th.
Yeah.
And Collingwood's back to the top. They
It's
just come from and you could see it coming again. Like, it was one of those games where, we obviously sat down to watch the end of it. You could just see that Collingwood were going to do that.
They've got a surge. The way they congratulate each other, I talked about that the other day off the field. Even when they're down, they always believe they're in it, and it really puts the fear of doubt in the opposition mind. And you've seen that time and time again.
Yep.
It's ridiculous that it's happened this many times, and you do still wonder, will it break? But hey, it doesn't look like it will. So
doesn't seem to. My 4 votes. Was to someone who, in a very similar way to last year, it took me a long time to agree with the form he was in, is Tom Stewart.
Okay.
He was getting into people's team of the weeks and votes before, even coaches' votes earlier in the year. I feel like this was the game again where I watched him. I was like, he's a really good footballer. Like, he's just incredible behind the ball. I feel like he didn't have a huge number of disposals. Yeah, 26, but for him, obviously he's had plus 30
he
a few
looked
times.
really good.
13 rebound 50s, 9 pressure acts, and I feel like we talked about him having a lot of time. Even if he was playing on halfback, it felt like a wing role. I feel like DeConing being in the ruck this week forced him to actually stay in the hole because he had to intercept.
Yeah.
And he really looked at home. He's such a natural defender.
He shouldn't be on the wing. Let's just say that.
So yeah, that was my 4.
I think it was Cam Mooney was talking about, he was obviously like, Hawkins is great, let's talk about that, sure, but Tom Stewart is crazy back there.
It was an incredible game.
And yeah, it's good to see him kind of back. And it's dangerous really because you've got Tom Hawkins firing again, you've got Tom Stewart back in the side playing
Dangerfield
well.
carrying on that finals form somehow.
It's ominous, but it is early in the season.
I thought he was cooked last year, Dangerfield. And
there are moments of every season where Dangerfield looks
absolutely.
good,
But his last 3 games have looked as good as ever. But yeah, Stewart, 4 votes. Boom.
So yeah, I didn't get Tom Stewart in my votes. I have Nick Newman as my number 4.
Right. Yeah.
I had the benefit of actually watching him at the game, and I was right.
It felt
on
like
the,
he was playing very high up the ground for me. That was the only thing that kept him out for me.
I was
and
watching
the fact that it was a 100-point win.
at the defensive 50 essentially. And one of my honourable mentions is Brodie Kemp, who played out of his skin for his 7th game ever. Nick Newman was not only instructing and teaching Brodie Kemp as they were playing, but he was telling Wiedering what to do. He was really in charge back there. And whilst he did get possessions up the ground, that's because they pushed West Coast up and up and up.
In that half of the ground for so long in the game.
And it's kind of a ridiculous stat line. It's the 14 marks, 6 intercepts,
the
12
amount of
pressure
football
acts.
he had was insane.
But then 10 score involvements for your half back.
Well, when there are
crazy.
40-odd scores.
That's true. That is very true.
10 score involvements.
But yeah, it was a crazy game from him, and he's sneakily a really good defender this year.
He is.
I think he's been going under the radar.
We really saw it with the
Toby Green game.
Yeah, absolutely. So
he can do both. He can do his lockdown, and he can corral in general. So it's a good skill set. It's just a shame he's over 30.
Some players don't hit their form.
That's true.
Weirdly.
That is true.
And if you get 4 good years out of someone who's hitting those straps, awesome. We've both talked about who each other's 5s are then. Yours was Powell.
Mine's Will Powell,
mine's
5.
is Darcy Moore.
Yeah,
so
makes sense. I want to say Will Powell coming back from that injury he had.
Incredible.
I genuinely did not know if he would ever play like this again.
So, it's close to the best game he's played, and he was playing some really promising footy before he got injured.
Yeah.
One of those injuries that you wonder how a player's ever going to be able to play the same. And he did. I heard a couple of weeks ago Adam Treloar talking about when he did the double strings, and he said that, so he made it back for finals that year, and his max speed went from about 33, 34 k's an hour to 28. He obviously picked that back up again slowly, but for the rest of that season, during that final series he played for Collingwood, just could not move as fast. So I imagine Will Powell, with an injury as serious as that, would have had a similar problem getting back to his best, but he was moving so well.
He looks really good.
And once again, the last few weeks has made me go, maybe that backline is really good still. I feel like you got Weller, you got Ballard, you got Collins, you got Powell. It's just a really nice mix.
I think it's secretly good. The problem is I think they leak a bit of pressure up the ground.
Yeah.
Obviously Miller being out of the side.
Hence they're still being 50-odd inside 50s despite them only having 6 goals kicked against them.
It's kind of you saw that from maybe Fremantle 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
They had good defenders, but they were leaking it a bit, and then they tightened that up. You could even say the same a little bit of Carlton this year compared to previous years.
Yep.
I really do hope Gold Coast can improve because I want to see them successful.
Yes.
And I think someone like Will Powell is great for them.
And we talked about it during the week about how important they've been for football in that state. I even looked at it the other day. Football's so far ahead of rugby in Queensland now. It's not funny because obviously rugby is such a high impact sport that a lot of parents are obviously wary of that as well. So football's done a really good job in Queensland. It's New South Wales where they're really lagging. And I think the problem the AFL has is that they think rugby is the competitor, but it's soccer. Soccer numbers in New South Wales carry the whole country, and that's where football's sitting off the charts. So
I think it was John Longmire that said only 1% of people in Sydney play footy of any kind, which is not enough. Especially when you've got 2 teams there. And
as the city that considers themselves an Australian city and we're one of the biggest sporting nations on earth, it's very strange.
Especially when, Sydney have been a very successful team for a very long time and their membership numbers don't ever quite stack up to that for some reason. It's better than you see with Brisbane and the like, but it's still not as much as
they're carried by South Melbourne fans, though. That's the problem. The Sydney movement hasn't really been huge.
I think it's been successful. I think they have entrenched themselves as a New South
they
Wales
are the team there, whereas GWS don't have that.
No.
I'll run through quickly special mentions. I've already mentioned Ballard and Collins. That whole back line had a really great day. Asava Radaglia I thought was really good once again because he was the only real height down there. Played a great game. Jack Sinclair again.
Yep.
So good. Duday might have made a vote if they'd ended up winning that game.
I agree.
Chincotta, I had in there as well. I thought, obviously, it was a smashing, but he was really good again.
He had, I can't remember, he had the most pressure acts on the ground or something
it was an insane number. And then I wanted to give a special mention to Jordan Ridley for keeping Cameron really quiet in the first half and then keeping Hawkins to 2 goals in the second half. We were incredulous that he wasn't moved on to him earlier. Like, it was insane. Like, you kicked 6 goals in the first half, and you're like, surely you switch Ridley and Zerk Thatcher. Like, if someone's on like that.
Even West Coast figured that out. They tried 4 opponents across Curnow for the day.
Bizarre. Like, Hawkins was clearly manhandling Zerk Thatcher, because he's what, 21. Like, Hawkins is one of the most powerful
Zerk
players
Thatcher
to
only
ever
21?
play. He might be older than that, but I feel like he's 21. And it just seemed such a long change to make. And when it did happen, it really did quell his influence on the game. 24. But yeah, it really did quell his influence on the game. So credit to Jordan Ridley for keeping 2 of the most dangerous forwards in the comp to probably 4 goals.
Which is impressive, because Jordan Ridley's been their best interceptor.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see him play a bit more of a defensive
and kept them
role.
to, I think, 4-ish goals.
It's somewhat hard to give someone votes when that many goals are kicked by key
exactly.
forwards,
I was
right?
kept them probably like 4
that many
goals,
goals in general.
despite like probably 80 inside 50s. So they were my specials.
I just wanted to add Stephen May in there. I thought he had a really good game. I won't say much more about that.
So I've got a few things to run on here.
I got nothing, so you shoot.
Sweet. St Kilda versus Port.
That was a game.
We love Wilkie on this show.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like if you get caught holding the ball on the goal line by Charlie Dixon, that's
that's
almost
Luke McDonald's was almost worse.
Yeah, that was worse.
Some shockers.
But yeah, that was a stinker. St Kilda seemed to be a continued news story on this podcast this year, just even regardless of Wilkie and Sinclair constantly being the votes. This week, they got, obviously first it was the audio leaking from the coach's box.
Yeah.
Then it was, is Ross Ball good, or are we just imagining things? And now it's, have you seen the mid-season resignation?
Yes.
Their high-performance boss quit.
Yes.
No explanation. Quit that day. Apparently it's because he doesn't like Ross Lyon.
I saw someone on, and this is outing myself as someone who reads the AFL subreddit, someone on Reddit just said, it's over before it even started.
And like, I feel like credit where it was due for the high-performance boss. They look really fit. Obviously, despite the injuries.
That won't change throughout this season, and they will find a suitable replacement.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as bad news as people think.
It's just another St Kilda in the news.
It just shows that Ross Lyon was always going to be a controversial.
Yeah, and he rubs people the wrong way.
appointment.
He's a very strong personality, and St Kilda would have known that bringing him in because he's been there before.
Did you see Dermy's impression of him?
So funny.
Oh my god,
that was so accurate.
It was so good.
I was.
But if I talked to someone who talked to me like that, I would fucking.
Every time I hear Ross Lyon
but I'd
talk,
want to.
it breaks my head. I remember when Freo were having that really bad year before he got sacked, and I was watching his press conferences because he's always been prickly, and it was just they lost 5 in a row, I think, to start that season, and it was just
it might have been more than 5.
Yeah, and he just kept getting more and more agitated. It was fascinating to watch.
5.
Obviously, he's in a much better mood at the moment that Kilda are, in the top 4, but
it's very interesting when you have those very opinionated coaches. Mick Malthouse was the same. When they're losing, they get they will point at anything else. Damien Hardwick's a little bit the same.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like other coaches that are similar in Ken Hinkley and Bevo, I see them in a different way where like they're prickly because they love their boys. And despite...
It was 0-10. 0-10. I knew it was higher.
Despite what I'll say about Hinkley and Bevo's coaching styles sometimes, because I think they're a bit interesting, they love their boys. Like, it's no wonder people love playing at those clubs because they have their back every time, to the extent that sometimes they say really dumb stuff in press conferences.
Hey, it got Tom Morris out for a little bit. So.
It did, and that really launched that into the limelight. And obviously Hinkley bringing up the Horn Francis stuff a couple of weeks ago was good. Like, I was glad he said that in a press conference.
I wish they would stop talking about it.
I
know we're talking about it now, but it was really funny. I don't know who it was talking.
Was Buckley shut them down about it?
Buckley's been good.
Yeah,
which shocks me because you know how I feel about Buckley.
Lewis and Lyon talking about it on Saturday, and Buckley was like, then we shouldn't talk about it. And they just kept talking, and he's looking at them like,
shut up. But someone recently was like, Essendon have a real chance to shut this booing saga down. They shouldn't even mention it. They shouldn't bring it up. And I'm like,
you've just brought it up.
You've put it into Essendon fans'
I have
minds.
heard Collingwood players saying that, Buckley was one of those coaches as well that was like very much in your corner.
Don't boo a champion.
But very much in your corner, very much emotional support, like that kind of coach, which players love, and they always do. That's why Leon Cameron was at GWS West for so long, because he was that as well. So,
well, I feel like
no wonder
Stuart used the same for Gold Coast.
So no wonder Buckley was so loud about that the other day.
It's just really obvious.
He would have hated
and it
that.
shouldn't take someone who was in a coach role 2 years ago
absolutely
to realise that. And Jordan Lewis, you know how I feel about him. He needs to shut up about it too. Just back up.
We said last week, both of us did, that we hoped the middle Sunday game would be as shockingly good this week as it was last week, because we got the absolute surprise.
It was better than the other two.
It was the worst of the three.
Hold on.
The Geelong Essendon game was...
I was thinking about Saturday.
No, high-scoring kick fest, amazing.
Yeah.
And then the other game was an actual great game of footy. And then we had one of the worst games of the year between Gold Coast and Richmond. And it's funny because we were talking about, the trouble Gold Coast were in a few weeks back. And like re-looking at their season based on where other teams are, I reckon if you'd told Gold Coast they'd go into this weekend's game against Melbourne having beaten both Geelong and Richmond this year, they'd be pretty stoked with that. Obviously,
13th.
Weird factors in that. But also, I'm kind of reassessing where I sit, because outside of the brain fade second half against Freo, who haven't been good this year, the other teams they've lost to were Sydney in round one when they still had pretty much full strength. They lost to St Kilda, who are basically 2 kicks off the top of the ladder. And they lost to Essendon, who've beaten some really good teams this year. So Gold Coast haven't really shamed themselves as much as I think people thought they did, because people thought Essendon and St Kilda weren't as good as they've turned out to be at the moment. So I'm holding my thoughts on Gold Coast currently.
I think one of the problems is that St Kilda beat them by so much.
Yeah,
St Kilda kicked their biggest score against them. And I'm pretty sure St Kilda have the worst points
for in the comp. Yeah, and the best.
Outside of Hawthorn and a couple of the lower teams, like for the top 10, 15, top 10 to 12 teams, easily the worst.
4 best against.
But it's just their best. Their against is killer. It's about 100 points better than the next.
My other thing I got from that game is my outrageously big call that I'm making now.
These are never good.
We won't know until like 3 or 4 years down the line whether I'm wrong or not. Hawthorn will win a final again before Richmond do.
All right, let me think about this.
That is what I got from watching football this weekend. Richmond needs some changes fast. They look very flat and stale.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. And in general, I think I'm a lot more lenient on Richmond than you are.
Yep.
But I think that Richmond still have enough top-end talent that isn't retiring age to be able to make a difference. If they start to get in decent younger players around them, and I know it's hard because of the trading issues, but that's where you can, like I said last week, look, if you're open to maybe shipping out a Dustin Martin to a contending team, something like that, you can kind of fix those gaps. And you've got players coming through like Cumberland, you've got players like Bolton, who if they sharpen their skills in front of goals can be an absolute weapon. Floston's still only 28. Nankervis is only 26.
Just that was a dire game.
There was no, don't get me wrong. They're struggling at the moment.
There was no
struggling.
weather concerns in that game, and they kicked 6 goals.
It's bad.
I don't think I've seen in dry weather Richmond kick a score under 50 for a long, long time.
I just think Cumberland will get better. I actually think Samson Ryan looks pretty decent.
He's got a lot of promise actually.
I think they've got backstocks that
and they are obviously
aren't
missing
playing
Lynch.
That can improve. Lynch is 30.
Yeah, but he's a huge part of their team
another
currently.
3 or 4 years, and he's super important to them now. He's ended up being their focal point completely. But I'm not all doom and gloom about them, but it's not great.
Well, that's why I said win a final, not play finals. I think they could still play finals again in the next few years, but I think they need to kind of do a reshuffle of all that.
I think Hawthorn have a long way to go
so do I.
Win a final.
So do I. That was why I said it's an outrageously big statement, because I think both teams are a long way off winning another one.
Imagine if Richmond come back and win a final this year.
That'd be very funny.
Crazy.
That'd be egg on my face. That'd be good. So Tassie talk, you brought it up at the start.
I did not.
What are your thoughts on a 19th team?
Tasmania deserves a team.
I agree with that.
I believe that we shouldn't have an uneven number of teams.
I agree with that.
But I also think we can't introduce 2 teams at the same time.
Yep.
I don't think they should be called the Tasmania Devils.
I totally agree with that too.
And
I don't think it's because of Disney copyright reasons, like some absolute numpty for Channel 7 wrote in the paper, also on the internet
I think
yesterday.
that factors in, but I think it's just because it's
the Victorian
boring.
team used to be called the Tasmanian Devils.
It's just boring.
Yeah.
That's
you also
all.
can't sue over the literal name of an animal.
No, I don't think you can either. But I just think that they need to be some form of green. Fremantle got rid of it, and it's been lost to the AFL. And
Tassie, I've always thought Tassie should be a green, probably green and white,
be.
green and yellow team. It is the Tassie colours in my head. Maybe even green and red because they've used that before, but that's pushing on what Freo were before.
Well, they got rid of it. Fuck 'em.
Yeah, they got rid of both of those colours.
If they want to steal other teams' colours, someone can steal their old ones.
Yeah, they want to
Give
wear
them
around
give them the
almost,
Freo song
almost
too.
all black kit. Oh, don't give them the Freo song. Give them something that's at least enjoyable.
Tassie heave ho.
So, well, the other part is obviously you mentioned no one likes an uneven number of teams.
No.
And the chat on that is the third WA team.
I've thought long and hard about this.
So
The Midland meth heads.
yeah, you have, yeah. So that's the chat at the moment. Obviously, we do have a large footballing population, so much so that being members of either AFL club doesn't guarantee you a seat at the games.
Oh, we're talking WA,
Yeah. So like that makes sense why to be in the
There
discussion.
are two viable options. There are only two viable options amongst the many, and it is a third WA team or a Canberra team.
Yes.
You either
I
need
feel
to
like
tell
GWS should just move
GWS
to
to
Canberra
ship out
because
or be
Canberra
there.
actually likes football.
It can't be South Australia. I don't think they have the population
I
for
don't
it
think so
personally.
either. Yep.
WA does have the population and the issue with the backlog on memberships. It's obviously not going to be another Victorian team. That's just for sure. It's not going to be international. It's not going to be New Zealand. It's not going to be London. It's not going to be fucking
America.
China, America. It's none of those.
We failed in China, that's for sure.
And it's not going to be Northern Territory.
No.
I can tell you that
because
for sure.
the population isn't there. It's the wrong time of year for
Yep.
the Northern Territory. We know all the problems with the Darwin team.
I think the third most likely is actually a really North Queensland
yeah,
team.
Cairns. I thought the same
Yeah.
thing.
So I think in order of likelihood, it's WA, Canberra,
Cairns.
Cairns.
Yeah, I would totally agree. But yeah, I'd prefer that they moved other teams to either or both Canberra and Cairns. So I prefer.
But you see, moving teams doesn't fix the 19 problem.
No, I mean
unless you
after the
merge.
20th one comes in. Like I feel like if they want to give a team to Canberra or Cairns, if they bring a 20th team in somewhere else, I'd rather they move to a team who already had a supporter base than start a new one somewhere that it's hard to build a team.
It's really tough with GWS playing both sides.
Yes. Well, they failed Western Sydney, so they might as well go to Canberra.
But you see, they wouldn't. I don't think they failed Western Sydney because I don't think they would get as many people to games as they do, which is still little
'cause
without
at least
Western
it's
Sydney.
near Sydney.
Yeah.
Well, my thought was for the WA team is so the discussion's been around a Joondalup team, which I
It
get.
should just
it's-
be. If it is, it should be the Perth Falcons.
It
right?
follows the same kind of methodology of what the AFL's done with GWS and Gold Coast, and it's gone to a large population growth area, which is the far northern suburbs. But I think, so my wilder idea is calling them the Northwest Sharks or something like that, and having it to encompass the northern areas all the way up to Geraldton, and you could play 4 games a year in Joondalup, which has enough capacity to host a team as big as someone like GWS, 2 a year in Geraldton, which is the same size as Joondalup, and then the main games at Perth Stadium. And that way I feel like you're a better chance of capturing that region. If you're playing some actual heart and soul stuff, if you play a couple of games in Geraldton, you're going to get that area. Like I know that they're a split between Freo and West Coast, and a lot of them still love East Freo in the Waffle because that's their team, and that's why I thought the Sharks would be a good name for them. And that they're on the West Coast.
I just think if you're basing it mostly in Joondalup, it kind of has to be
The Falcons, because West Perth have had that for so long.
And you don't have to call them the Perth
Yeah,
Falcons.
it
and
could
they won't
again.
be.
It could be the Northwest Falcons. But yeah, I think capturing Geraldton in that to try and
Geraldton is tough though because you could really only play there at a rural.
well, as I say, two games a
level.
year. But like Geraldton is the same size as Joondalup Oval. So for the smaller team games, which they're not going to get huge,
Does it disadvantage a side to give them home games at 3 different stadiums?
it does. But in their first year, does it matter? Like I think if you're spending 2 years, you know that it's a growth product.
But again, if it is a growth product and it succeeds, if they take those games away from Geraldton,
yeah, well
that's a
that
loss.
is true. But at least you're capturing the populace.
I feel that's
your Resi's
disingenuous.
team can play there at least.
I don't know. I feel like WA teams have to travel enough as it is.
They do,
Getting them
yeah.
on the plane to go somewhere else in WA, that sucks.
Well, it's like, but I mean the Bulldogs play in Ballarat.
Once a year.
Yeah. So you keep one, but after you do that, so once they're too big to play at Joondalup Oval, people from Joondalup will go to Perth. That's fine. And you play 1 game a year in Geraldton against a team who, like Gold Coast, would probably be a really good option to play there. and then at least you're keeping those fans there. They can get their one actual home game a year and travel down to Perth for the big games if they
Look,
want to.
I'm not against it, and I feel like
I think it's 16 to 18,000 the stadium out there.
the Midwest area should be captured in some way because
Much talent comes
not
from
to
up
talk
there.
about my previous job, but I've
Yeah.
dealt with a lot of people in the Midwest region. They're pretty loyal.
Yeah, absolutely.
If
and you look at,
something is in their area and services them locally, they will stick with that
yes,
until it falls apart. No comment.
and you look at the insane amount of footballers that have come from Northampton.
Yeah,
and Geraldine.
yeah,
It's
definitely.
a freakish amount. Like obviously Kennedy.
It could be a really
Hazelby,
good zone.
According to Wikipedia, Nathan Broad, despite the fact that he definitely grew up in Bindoon and not Dongra. But yeah, like that does have a lot of footballing talent out there. So they're obviously the kind of area that you should be promoting. It's the same reason as why we're talking about Tasmania. So
And I'm sure that there would be people that could make the same argument in South Australia. Obviously, you've got the Red Leagues there who are rumoured to be putting through a thing for
and
a
then they
license.
denied it themselves.
I think a big issue with that one, and it's similar to what we just said about West Coast and Freo fans being all across this region now, is that Adelaide would kick a stink.
Oh, yeah.
If the Red
They'll
Leagues came
throw it.
in,
Yeah.
they would lose a significant portion of fans. Not that I can't really fathom changing your football team. Like, I'm still struggling with the fact that the Northern Bull Ants and the Carlton VFL team exist.
I'm so lucky with Geelong with that Geelong's Resi's team has just always been Geelong, because Geelong was a VFL team before they were or a VFA team before they were a VFL team.
I can't fathom the need to switch or change a team. Like, I obviously wasn't really cognizant or around for Fitzroy just being destroyed, but if that happened today, I think that would be absolutely devastating. And that's why I'm not really for the merging or destroying of a team, because I feel like there's too much history. We've seen it happen once; it should not happen.
And Fitzroy
again.
doesn't have the supporter base they had before. I think moving safer than merging. So like Sydney moved.
Maybe just make Fitzroy the 20th team in North Queensland.
Sydney moved, and they at least kept a lot of their fans because it was the same team. Whereas
that's the
merging Brisbane and Fitzroy caused a lot of issues. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned that with the Northern Bull Ants, because I think it's funny. The same thing with like our mate Tim, who's talked about that before with like West Coast. He doesn't even care about West Coast in the waffle. He's East Perth. He only cares about West Coast for how their players are doing. Of which this week there will be 0, because they have 26 fit players, which is the entire travelling team.
Yeah, no, I don't think they'll take all of them.
No,
but
crikey, it's getting to dire levels.
I totally get that side of things too, because I watch the Carlton reserves games simply because I want to see how the younger kids are going. And I don't have that with the Bull Ants anymore, but I still care about how they go. It's cruel. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
I'm just glad the Bull Ants are around. I'm the number one WA Bull Ants fan. Let's be real.
I think that there would be no argument with that. I think you're one of the most invested Bull Ants fans in the country, let alone in WA.
Need to get some merch, that's for sure.
That'd be a good jumper to have. I was walking past the East Fremantle stand the other day, and I thought about buying a jumper, because they've got the old East kit back again, the full stripes down the middle. I didn't do it, but I might one day. It's hard when I work those games and I walk past them, like, I could buy a little cheeky merch. But yeah, it's good. It's so many clubs have so much history behind them. And that's even state level clubs.
Yep.
And it's the problem in Perth. Like when Freo and West Coast tried to build their own teams in, it didn't work, and that's why Freo moved away from that model, and why they're back with Peel.
I think that's the second week in a row we've mentioned that, actually.
Yeah, it is. West Coast just keep giving reasons to do it.
Yeah.
Because if your Resi's team is based around having at least 10 available West Coast players, and you don't really have
guarantees you need to have less than 10 injuries at any time.
And you're also really working on, you don't really have the Colts set up. So like, because you don't have a catchment region.
Yeah.
So like all the teams have their area, and they come straight through. And I think it's a bit different in other states, but obviously Perth is very much structured to, you pick players from your region, they stay loyal to your club. It doesn't always work. Players get traded.
People go to Subi.
Yeah, true. Canelio Jr. is playing for Perth at the moment instead of Swan Districts, because they didn't need half-backs. They've got Toby Watson. But like for the most part, they come through that region.
Is it Toby or Toby?
It is Toby Watson.
No, I refuse.
Yeah, I know, it's Toby Watson.
As soon as you said that, my heart broke.
I know, it's so sad. But yeah, it is interesting like that, because they don't have that cult set up coming through, which means their Resi's players are just picked Resi's players and
Yeah.
waffle players from other teams, like what they can get. So they do rely on that star power, and when it's not there, we've just seen West Coast come off the back of back to back to back 80 to 100 point losses, which is rough. They had one of the former Claremont greats come out of Kane Williamson came out of retirement to play against his old club for West Coast on the weekend, and he was West Coast's best player. That's how bad they're going.
Yikes.
He's been not playing for 2 years. His last game was the prelim in 2021, and he came back and had 32 touches.
Oh, man. I mean, that's not bad.
Imagine being that good at football. Imagine retiring for 2 years and going, yeah, I'll pull a jumper on for West Coast against my old team.
Nah.
It's insane.
You'd run around for 20 minutes. You'd be cooked.
There's players out there that he was still fitter than who are current players.
Yeah.
Some people are just freak athletes, and they're so dedicated to it. Like you see Boomer Harvey running.
Not anymore.
Well, yeah, but yeah. Oh,
Sorry. Too soon?
brutal. You saw Boomer Harvey running for North like over the last few years, and like he was in better shape than some of their players. Like just a player who's just so dedicated to being.
It was a different kind of fitness, though. He was like
he got
ridiculously tank.
but like he could.
But he was still fit.
Yeah, he was still lean
which is
and,
what's
and fit.
important.
And
Well, I mean, you have to kind of be.
whereas some players just don't because they're. And it's understandable if you're eating an athlete's diet for 12 years and then you stop working out with that intensity 5 days a week and you keep eating that same food, you're just going to lose it.
I would just wonder how long could you keep turning up to the gym after you've retired at the club? How long can you just pop in for a visit and be like, I'll just use the bars for a minute?
I do wonder. That'd be interesting because I know Schofield, after he filled in, said that he had to get a new fob.
Interesting.
But he still used his locker.
They cancelled a premiership player's
They
fob.
cancelled the premiership. He's a life member as
That's
well.
not on.
But I think they changed them over. So they went from the old fobs, like the little buttons, to cards, which obviously everyone's doing now. And he didn't have a card. But he said he used the same locker. So he just put his stuff in Jermaine Jones's locker.
I rate that.
He was like, no, that's my number. And he's wearing like 67. He's like, no, that one.
Always the unit. And also fronting up to do media for the West Coast Carlton game.
What absolute legend. And then played against Claremont again. Yeah, and look, you have to rate that. And that goes to show how well the club has treated players over the years. Like if their multiple players have been willing to come out of retirement and help them out, massive kudos to the club for the way they've handled things.
And I think that's always been a West Coast thing. It's just they're in a real rough spot with their injuries. I don't think it is anything to do with Adam Simpson, although I do understand why people might be calling for him to move on.
I think if they lose, I think they've got, in the next 3 weeks, they've got both Richmond and Hawthorn. If they lose both of those, I think they're in big trouble.
I think the only thing that really brings it into, wow, that's awful territory is when someone pointed out that they've had more 100-point losses at home than they have had wins.
Yeah.
Just wins in general.
They've lost.
Over the past
it feels
2 or
like
3
they've
years.
lost as many games over the last 3 years than they've lost ever. Like I know that's not true. But it feels like it.
It's really going to do a dent in those standings where you see like Geelong, Sydney, West Coast. Was there another one? No, it's really just those
those
three.
three that just made finals every year.
Finals. They're really going to drop off.
It is going to damage that because it's three years in a row now without them. I don't think they've ever done that before.
Nope.
And
that's another warning sign, right, for them? Like that's unprecedented.
When they came in as a club, the AFL didn't have the new system they have now, which tries to build up teams over time. They let West Coast and Adelaide have open slather of state players, and then you got West Coast won 2 flags, Adelaide won 2 flags. The AFL went, hang on, we've gone a bit too hard here. And look, and we saw that obviously both those teams, even after those flags, continued to be successful. West Coast won another one. Adelaide still made finals. I felt like they were top of the ladder every year from like 2001 to 5.
That's sneaky because during that period they obviously didn't win, but they were always around.
They were. But yeah, it's just... and I feel like they're going to have to tread that water again with Tasmania because I feel like they went too far the other way with Gold Coast and GWS. Like they set them up too much to fail. And they tried to go...
look at those inaugural teams and you go...
There's not much there. Like Gold Coast got Ablett and it made them more relevant for the first couple of years. But even with him there, they struggled. Whereas GWS were managed... I think Heath Shaw was one of the biggest name they pulled.
And he was
brilliant for them for a long time.
But with some of the other names, like, you know, you're struggling when you're like, oh yeah, we'll bring a 31-year-old Satanto Halpin over.
Dean Brogan. Almost post-retirement. Chad Corns, who was he's still a unit. Yeah. He's a big boy. I saw there was a couple of pre-seasons
ago. One of them
ago.
has to be.
Yeah, it's still opposites, aren't they? A couple of pre-seasons ago, Chad Corns posted a photo to his Instagram it was like captioned something like just a quick workout. It was him and Charlie Dixon, both like sweaty with their shirts off. Like, that's two fucking huge men. Like, they are massive boys. And I was struck by the realization that Chad Corns was like 40 in that photo.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, that man's been retired for 10 years and he looks like that. Good stuff.
I always think of that footage of him down in the rooms with the ropes.
I don't know what he was doing. I think he was taken off or something. He was mad.
I remember when someone tore that jumper. He was playing for GWS and he just wore it torn for ages because he was like, nah, just show off the rig.
I would if I could.
I reckon a lot of players do, genuinely. You brought it to my attention the other day.
What did I do?
Nick Day cost $16,000 Anzac jumper. Obviously, he won the Anzac medal. It's not going to be worth that much ever again. There is memorabilia that gets more expensive.
And the thing
or
is,
stays the same.
they will sell replicas.
Yeah.
They'll
sell replicas of the medal.
In there with the medal and whatever.
It is the jumper, but is it worth $16,000?
As long as it's going towards Anzac charity.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important. That's the important part to mention. As long as it's going to actual charity, actual work that needs to be done. But that's a lot of money on something that means next to nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Collingwood fans.
I understand people drop the $1,000 or so on a jumper for, that's cool. That's a match worn jumper. Awesome. 16 grand.
Yeah, you were looking at like what, $400 for a Brad Close jumper the other day, or 600?
Yeah. Well, someone who had a really good game in that game where the jumper was going for like, it was like, is that Guthrie? It was going for like $500, and I was like, that's a steal.
Tom Hawkins was the expensive one, right?
Yeah. Because that was gathering. He kicked like 5 goals or something.
Yeah. But yeah, I get why people do it. You get something out of it and you give to charity, but 16,000.
It's so much money. It's unfathomable.
Yeah.
But some people earn that in a heartbeat. So
Yeah.
it's probably just some jacked
Really
up Collingwood
rich
fan.
Collingwood fan.
It's probably Eddie.
That would not surprise
They won't let
me.
him into the club, so he had to
Remember
buy
when he
a
tried to get in
jumper.
a shipping container to get to the WA Grand Final? Wouldn't put anything past him. Anyway, let's end it there.
Yeah, let's wrap that up. Next week I'll try and come up with some who would wins. I feel like we've fallen off the wagon.
we
on
have
those.
fallen off the who would wins.
Who would win, Chad or Kane Corns? Chad.
Yeah.
Every matter of the word.
Who would win in the media? Chad.
Chad stays out of it. That's a win. Anyway, thank you for listening to The Back Pocket. You'll find us at The Back Pocket AU on all socials, and hopefully we'll come back on Wednesday next week instead of Thursday. We tried to this week, but I tried to get a new recording set up working, and it didn't work, and I was not in the mood to record once that was finished.
He had a mentee B.
Let's
just leave it at that.
had a little snooze afterwards. It was good. But we will see you next week. Enjoy the footy.
As always, PayPal me at gmail.com. Nah, cut that.